The tribunal chamber aboard the high warship Merciless Rex was carved from obsidian and gold, hovering in low orbit above the shattered remnants of Earth. The once blue planet, now a scorched husk, glowed dimly below. Seated high upon thrones of alloyed gravsteel were the triarchs of the Velker Ascendancy, the most feared rulers in the galaxy. Before them stood a single woman, Seraphine Ward, last ambassador of the human race. Her hands were bound in pulse cuffs, her face streaked with soot and dried blood. Behind her, 2 death guards waited with plasma scythes drawn. Her trial was ceremonial, her sentence already decided: extinction. The Velker had conquered humanity with clinical ease. Earth's fleets were ash. Mars' colonies had surrendered. The Titan Accord fractured. But Seraphine still stood. And as the Death Guard raised his blade, she stepped forward and shouted, "If you kill me, you destroy your only path to survival. Let me live, and I will give you something no Velker war engine ever could. A human-born empire." The room stilled. The High Triarch narrowed his 4 eyes. "Speak carefully, Terran." Seraphine raised her chin. "I offer more than resistance. I offer evolution." Middle. They did not kill her. Not yet. Instead, the Triarchs imprisoned her aboard Merciless Rex, allowing her to speak once more at the next War Council. For 7 days, Seraphine was locked in a cold steel chamber, visited only by drones that monitored her vitals and injected nutrient gels. She waited. And when summoned again, she faced a room filled not just with Velker leaders, but envoys from subjugated systems, data feeders, and xenobiologians. She had an audience of 100 billion through the Velkernet. And she began with a story. "Do you know how humans survived on Earth before we had cities? We were slow, weak, clumsy. Alone we were prey. But we endured because we adapted. We learned our enemies. We watched the stars and dreamed not of conquest, but of transcendence. You crushed our armies, and still I stand here, not in vengeance, but with a proposition." The Velker scoffed. "Your species is broken," one general growled. "What empire could you possibly birth?" Seraphine smiled. "One built not on dominance, but on integration." They didn't understand, not yet. But they listened. The human experiment. Seraphine offered the Ascendancy a bold proposal. A controlled experiment. She would be granted a single vessel, crewed by a mix of Velker scientists and a handful of surviving humans. Their mission: build a proof-of-concept colony on an uninhabited Class M moon, without war, domination, or hierarchy. The Velker considered it madness. But Triarch Zal, known as the strategist of eons, was intrigued. "If the humans fail, it will prove they are unfit for integration," he said. "If they succeed, we may learn something before they die out." Thus began the Genesis Mandate. Seraphine was given 1 ship, 12 hybrid crew, and a barren moon called Velisfor. Year 1. The seedling. What Seraphine built on Velisfor wasn't a fortress. It wasn't even a colony in the traditional sense. It was a laboratory of civilization. She combined human creativity with Velker resilience. She didn't just teach, she cross-trained. Velker tacticians learned human logic systems. Human engineers used Velker biocoding to grow homes from crystallized mycelium. Children, half human, half Velkarian, were born within the first 18 months. They were smarter, empathetic, curious. They didn't see themselves as products of war. They saw themselves as the future. By the 3rd year, Velisfor had a functioning society. Not just surviving but thriving. The Velker Empire watched. And grew uneasy. The reckoning. News of Velisfor spread across the stars. Other species, subjugated or sidelined, began requesting entry into the Genesis program. The ascendancy had kept them in separate caste systems for generations. Now, Seraphine's colony offered something dangerous: unity. Triarch Yeren, head of the Velker military elite, ordered a quiet strike. A stealth cruiser was dispatched to Velisfor with a single mission: remove Seraphine and detonate the colony under a biological false flag. But they were too late, because Seraphine had seen it coming. She'd studied Velker strategy. Read their signals. She'd planted counterdrones in the star lanes months before. The moment the assassin ship uncloaked, it was met with a human-designed gravlance, a weapon made from repurposed Velker tech, upgraded by human unpredictability. The cruiser was disabled. Instead of returning fire, Seraphine sent a message: "You tried to erase us with violence. We responded with mercy. Because the future I'm building doesn't need to conquer you. It just needs to outlast you." The tide turns. The failed attack changed everything. Dozens of Velker generals petitioned the Triarchs to destroy Velisfor outright. "It is a seed of rebellion," they said. "Letting it grow is suicide." But something had shifted in the ascendancy. Lower caste Velkarians, workers, scientists, even some junior tacticians, began requesting transfer to the human experiment. The logic was inescapable. The ascendancy had ruled for 6,000 years. In that time, their empire had grown stagnant, even as their armies expanded. But Seraphine's empire evolved daily. Children learned 4 languages before age 5. Families were built across species lines. Decisions were made through open-source consensus algorithms, not inherited bloodlines. And the people of Velisfor were happy. For the first time in centuries, Velkarians saw something they hadn't felt in generations. Oh, the promise fulfilled. 5 years after her trial, Seraphine was summoned again, not as a prisoner, but as a guest of honor. She stood before the Velker Triarchs, not in cuffs, but in full regalia, draped in a cloak woven from both Terran silk and Velker flame thread. Triarch Zal spoke. "You were born of a dying world, Ambassador. But your voice reached farther than any fleet." Seraphine bowed slightly. "Because I spoke not just for humanity, but for what could be reborn from us." A vote was held. By majority consensus, the ascendancy agreed to integrate the Genesis mandate into its core structure. No longer would humans be classified as a subjugated species. They would be partners, not through war, not through revolution, but through rebirth. Ending. Years later, long after the old Triarchs had passed, a new capital rose. Not on Earth, not on Velker Prime, but on Velisfor. It was called Ward's Promise. Seraphine lived to see it bloom. A metropolis of merged cultures, ideas, and technologies. Velker war hymns were sung beside Terran lullabies. Libraries stored memories from dozens of extinct worlds, all curated by the children of Seraphine's new empire. She died at 92, surrounded by descendants both human and Velkarian. Her final words were inscribed on the Hall of Origins. "They came to end me with a blade, and I gave them a future instead." From her plea for life rose a legacy that shattered empires, not with fire, but with vision. And across 1,000 star systems, one truth echoed. Sometimes mercy is not surrender. Sometimes it's the first stone laid in an empire the stars will never forget.